Bier Brewery, sitting with the gentlemen that run this establishment. We got Sean Reeves, and of course we have Jerry and Ryan Connor. Thanks for doing this, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, one of the things I always like to jump off these conversations with is everyone has a unique origin story to how they got started. So for those that may be unfamiliar with you guys here at Bier Brewery, never been to the establishments, both here or the one that you have in Carmel, enlighten the audience to how Bier Brewery came about and how you guys got started.
Gosh, 11 years ago, we opened our doors, and prior to that, about 2 years prior to that, I know Darren and I were working on a business plan that he would do. I had a couple old business plans from one of my previous lives, and I gave those to him to kind of show the format. And he started, and then he'd throw it to me, and I'd take a look at it, and I'd throw it back to him. So over the course of about a year and a half, we kind of developed our business plan. And it was his passion. I mean, I had no desire, no interest in brewing. I virtually, other than drinking the beer at that time, that's about the extent of what I did. And but after he worked at Great Fermentations for a while, and I think he decided that maybe he wanted to do this long term. So we started 11 years ago, and then in that beginning process, Ryan was in college, and Ryan would, junior and senior year, he'd come home on a Thursday night, he'd brew on Friday with his brother, and then go back to IU on Saturday. But then during the summers, he would work here, and that's how he learned how to brew. So
I started like cleaning kegs here. I was working a different job at Sundown Gardens, and Darren was like, "Hey, you want to clean some kegs and kind of learn some of the brewing process?" I'm like, "Sweet, sure." So I'd come in and clean kegs. My 2 days off, and then after so many weeks and months of doing that, I'm like, dude, I don't know if I can continue doing this. I need a day off. And he was like, you'll have a day off when you die. You can rest as much as you want at that
True
point.
entrepreneurial mindset there, right?
So I'm like, you know what? I want to work here. That's some great motivational information right there. So, but yeah, then I went back to school, and I'd come back on Thursday, brew Friday, and then usually I'd leave Saturday. It was funny because it was towards the end of my college career, and all my buddies are like, "You're missing out on the parties, man. You're leaving out prime time." I'm like, I'm looking down the road. There'll be another party tomorrow night. So that's kind of how I kind of got involved too.
That's the evolution of Bier Brewery. So that's where we are today.
That's fantastic. I mean, one of the hallmarks of this craft brew universe is the creativity around the names, and you guys got a few interesting ones there. What is you guys' process for coming up with the names of the beer? Everyone seems to have a different one, from just throwing stuff at a dartboard and see what comes out or whatnot.
To start with, I mean, I remember we were trying to name the brewery.
Yeah. And
I had 2 or 3 pages. We were thinking about locating in South Broad Ripple, so Canal Brewery, Sobro Brewery, and we just went through. And Darren, in the very, very beginning, he says, "I just like Bier Brewery." And I said, "Seriously, what kind of a name do you want to name it?" Bier Brewery. And I said, "Okay." Well, we looked at other names, and he kept coming back to it. And I said, "Hey, go for it." And it does make sense, because his passion for German ales kind of fit right into the format. So.
Well, I love the logo that you guys did with beer into the state of Indiana. But how did you come up with, say, PDG? How do you come up with some of these porch parties, some of these names?
There's a lot to it. I'll let Sean chime in a little bit, but during the brewing process, we'll throw out a bunch of different names, from the sales reps to the brewers, and then we'll, hey, no, that's good, that's not good. PDG. Now, I remember prior to this being a year-round beer, it was already established as a name, but I was out sampling it one time, and this guy tries it. He's like, "Man, that's pretty damn good. What's the name of it?" I'm like, "PDG." He's like, "PDG." I'm like, "Pretty damn good." He's like, "Oh my gosh." That's kind of how that one came about. He's like, "Man, this is pretty damn good." So, other ones like the porch party you mentioned, that's actually a collaboration with Two Chicks and a Hammer, the HGTV show Good Bones. And during that collaboration, we let them make that name, and porch party was more of like a community get together. Everyone on the porch having some beer. It's a porch party. It's kind of what community does. So other collaborations, we allow other people to come with names. Keep Indy was one. Weizengut, that one's more like Weizen means wheat, Goot means good wheat. But there's a lot more that goes into it, and Sean can elaborate too.
A lot of it's serendipitous. It's just like we'll stumble into a name. A lot of times over when we're in production brewing beer, we'll know that we've got to come up with a name, and it'll be 3 or 4 of us in production kicking around possible names for it, ingredients or the season or whatever it happens to be. Every once in a while, lightning will strike, and we've landed on the name of some of the beers that just were sort of a eureka moment where we knew what it was going to be. A lot of times just kind of a process of everybody just kicking the name around back and forth between each other and finally settling in on something that we really like. A lot of them describe what they are, just like a beer brewery. That's a comment I get out talking to people a lot is, hey, say what you are and be what you say you are. And I think a lot of the names reflect that as well.
And it's funny too, in the very beginning, we really didn't name our beers. Every beer did not have a name. It was Belgian Blonde, Belgian Double, Belgian Pale Ale. And then over the course of X amount of years, we're all right, we should probably start putting some names with these beers. And, sometimes names sell the beer in itself as well.
Buddies sell the beer too, like Cowabunga.
Yeah, and then Cowabunga, that was one with my buddy.
Sure.
He, one of the funniest guys you'll meet. He ended up getting a boat called Cowabunga, and he painted it and all that. And you know what, dude? We're gonna name a beer Cowabunga. So
That's awesome.
It's just every beer is unique in that sense.
Yeah, I think of Porter John too. We've got something special. I think we did for a guy named John who is an old Deadhead hippie, Grateful Dead kind of guy, and he's one of the most regular of our regulars. And after you've been coming in here for 10 years, he's been coming in since pretty much day one. And he loves the robust porter we brew. And I think they just came up with the idea of just calling it John's Porter, and it stuck.
Well, he kept, when porters are in season, that's great. When they're out of season, we don't have a porter. He kept saying, "Oh, you need a porter during the summer. Porter this, porter that." Finally, Darren was tired of hearing about it. Okay, John, Porter John, we'll do this. And
Hey, let's listen to your audience.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
And it goes back to what's so unique about that is it's a lighter, robust porter. It's not super heavy, so during the summer you can still drink on it and be able to have a couple rather than just one and be super full.
Well, like you said, listen to your customers. I mean, we're so community-minded here in this neighborhood and neighborhoods in Indianapolis that we do listen to our customers, and we want to be a part of their lives as much as they want to be a part of ours as well. So
Well, that's good. Well, Sean, you mentioned you're a home brewer. Ryan, you were brewing in college. I always ask this question: what was the first beer that hooked you in this space? Because obviously, Jerry, you were trying them all and sampling. For me, it was like coming out of college, you're just trying to drink the cheapest stuff. I mean, it was like go buy a case of Natty Light for $13.99 when I was in school. Then I have a fat tire, and it's just like, whoa, what is this? Right? So that kind of led me down the path to kind of try some different browns, and then Sam was just starting to really explode all their lineup, other than just their core few and Dogfish and Sierra Nevada, etc.
So Natty Light was yours. Back in my days, it was Falstaff, things like that. How about you?
Probably Milwaukee's Best, Beast Light.
Oh, Milwaukee.
Honestly, in high school, we were drinking Miller High Life and then Coors Light. But
there was an interlude there with Ice House because they had high alcohol content. But
Red
when I was
Dog
in
and
college,
Ice
we
House.
used to call it Ass House because that's what you do the next day. Completely sit and pee out your ass the next day.
Well, it's like Colt 45 in my days. You drink one Colt. Oh, they just had 2 beers after you put one down.
Some malt liquor. How about for you guys? Which one hooked you?
I would say, because I'll be 50 this year, and so I kind of caught the very front edge of the kind of craft beer craze. I would say it was probably a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, like a lot of folks. It was there wasn't a lot available. I mean, you had like Newcastle as an import, Sierra Nevada was out there, Red Hook, and there wasn't a lot to choose from in the early to mid 90s when I started drinking beer. But that was my transition, probably to Sierra Nevada.
I did Killian's and probably Blue Moon. And then when Darren came about, I got hooked on his Kolsch and Belgian Blonde.
And kind of going back to your original question too. So Darren was the home brewer. I never homebrewed, but that's kind of how it all started too. He had the passion for home brewing, and so whenever he was back at the house, or he moved back to the house, he was home brewing. We had a kegerator downstairs, had like 4 taps on it. There's a 13-year age difference between me and him.
Oh, I gotcha.
You know, so I'm the youngest brother. I'm down there like,
Yeah.
you know, my buddies sleep over.
Yeah.
Darren's like, do not drink from my kegerator. Well, he would always get caught. At the time, he had like, you know, Sierra Nevada homebrew, like replication, and then I think he started experimenting with PDG. So here we are, you know, I hate to say the age, but we're young. We're like down there trying some beer. We're like, you know, doing this, like, oh God, that's so bitter. But he would always catch us, and it kind of goes back to just him and his mentality at the brewery. But he would always catch us because it would drip into the drip tray. He was such a clean freak. In
True.
quality.
I thought he could hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'd be like,
He
whoa.
might.
You know, drip tray, bam, there'd be some drips in there. He's like, you down there drinking my beer again? You know.
I taught him well.
Yeah. But honestly, after like the domestics, I kind of transitioned. You know, I did have some Sierra Nevada Pale and all that, but I would kind of transition to wheats at first, and then really from wheats, I actually went into IPAs and pales. You know, Blue Moon at the time, Widmer Brothers had a wheat that I was drinking on. So my slow evolution into craft beer was wheat beer.
Gotcha. Well, one of the things I like to highlight, so all these cans here, these are all successes, right?
Oh yeah.
And everybody, and Sean, you coming from a homebrewing background, you probably had that blend or that recipe that you were trying that maybe you thought it looked good on paper, and then we actually had the finished product, it was dead on arrival, not good. So these obviously highlight you guys' successes and what's on your taps, but are there any failures or maybe a failure that led to a success that you guys can look back on over these, you know, many years to say, hey, this is, you know, we thought it was going to be good, it wasn't, but maybe it gave birth to something else that we weren't thinking about.
Man.
I think a lot of it is a work in progress.
Yeah.
If we're known for anything, I think it's for, I always tell people, we make the kind of beer for people who want beer in their beer. I mean, we make traditional German lagers, we make traditional ales from around the world. Everything's right down the pickle barrel in terms of the beer judge certification program or Cicerone program. We're really striving for making stylistically accurate beers. As a result, I mean, we hadn't done a lot of like the hazy IPAs until recently, the New England style juicy IPAs, sours and tarts. That's something new that we've really gotten into as the market has moved. We've tried to move with the market. I don't think it's ever been our approach to chase trends, but having something that fits that bill for what those drinkers want. And I think we're getting closer and closer all the time, looking for always sourcing new ingredients and new suppliers for things that are going to raise the game on those beers that are already good. But I think all of us here are always looking for a better way to do things and striving for what's going to make it just a little bit better.
Yeah.
I don't know, what do you guys think? I've only been here
Well,
3
kind
years.
of to touch
so.
on that too, like we are known for the stylistic, traditional, and that's what a lot of people love about our facility is you can come in, you can get a light beer, malty beer, hoppy beer. It's not 6 hoppy beers and 1 light beer. You know, we have all sorts of anything you're into. You know, if you like Killian's Irish Red, we can pretty much guide you into a beer that you might like or at least be able to enjoy here. And if it's not your style, I think I hear this a lot is like, I don't, you know, I'm not a dark beer drinker, but any of your dark beers I've had, it's been good. I can appreciate it. So that's something we're known for. Definitely, it's just the variety on top of what Sean was saying. But a lot of our beers, I mean, Darren it's, you know, not to hype Darren up, but he'll take it over to our production facility because we have 2 breweries. We have our taproom brewery and then right behind us, our production facility, and new recipe. He just takes it over there and brews it on the big system, and we have 75 kegs of it. You know, it goes back to his experience, his knowledge.
You know,
it's
you
crazy.
look back. I can't think of a failure from those terms.
Yeah.
If you look at a failure from brewing a beer that didn't come out right or spoiled beer, I can only think of one time, and that was due to the yeast that we got.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the PDG, right? Wasn't that the PDG?
We did have, in the early days, we were grinding grain. We had grain right next to, before we had our production facility, right next to our fermenters and brew system. And there was a moment in time where we had a couple batches that were turning sour. Nowadays, you know, you could have sent it out as a sour IPA, but we are not about that. And we did dump some batches.
But that was
kind of-
only, I think that was only like a 7 or 2 7
Yeah,
barrels.
it was like 2 7 barrels. We figured out what was happening. We,
And that was,
evaluated
when you
everything.
think about it, 11 years in business, and we've only got 14 barrels that we ever had to pour out. When you hear these horror stories, when these guys have a 300 barrel system that something's gone wrong,
Oh, yeah.
that is a boatload.
Yeah, we had a former employee that moved up to Chicago and worked for a brewery which will remain nameless. But I remember him coming back and saying, yeah, we had to dump an entire tank worth of, it's an 80 barrel tank of beer, so 160 half barrels of beer.
Yeah.
And
Ouch.
I would say that one of the things, and I do hear this in the marketplace too, is we're out selling beer in liquor stores and in restaurants and bars, is everyone will say, man, your beer is so consistent. It's always good. It's
Oh.
consistent. It's batch to batch, same beer to same beer. The consistency is spot on. And we're not doing a lot of empirical QA, QC laboratory testing. It's just drinking one can. You can open up a can from 2 or 3 canning runs ago or pull a keg from a couple batches ago. It's dead nuts on. I mean, it's...
And that's the strength that we have here. And what proof it is all these awards. I always tell the customers come in here, this tells you how consistent we are. And that's the hardest thing. Darren will tell you the hardest thing in brewing is making today's batch the same as yesterday's. And he'll also get into, you get a lot of people talking about Bud and Miller and Coors and so forth. And Darren's got the utmost respect for those
Oh, yeah.
guys, because day in and day out, no matter where you go in the world, it's the same shit out there with those guys. And that's what he strives for. That's one of the points that he goes after.
And that's I think that something that we may cover later on, just the quality of the employees, the character of the employees that you hire, especially back in production, is so much of that process. I've told a lot of people, you could set your watch by how things run back there. We brew 40s on Thursdays and 40s, and those 40 barrel batches, we're always within 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe at the most, but everything gets done the same way every single time. Things get hung up the same place, things go down in sanitizer the same way, hoses get rolled up the same. It's even the little things. It makes it easy to troubleshoot, it makes it easy to identify where there might be a problem and address it before it becomes a real issue. It's just day in and day out, it's a machine.
It developed over all the years. I mean, if you look at our history, we didn't sell a single pint. You could not come in here when we first opened for the first 3 years and have a pint. It was carry out only. We would do pint nights once a month, every couple months. And then it took 5 years for us to even put a product into a can. We're almost coming up on 11 years, but it just goes back to the consistency, and we really wanted to be dialed in that every can you open or every beer you have tastes the same like before.
Well, we built I think our business plan and our profile was such that we built it on premise. I mean, you don't build a brand, first of all, on off-premise accounts. You got to start on premise, and that's where we started. Mm-hmm. And we took a handful of the restaurants that we thought were the top of the line that would fit us the best, and we started there. And then finally, like Ryan said, we got into the canning business, into the off-premise account. So
yeah, we've never had the mindset of, all right, you're 10, we want to be in 3 states, and we want to be, that's just not who we are. It's a controlled, slow growth, and now we're at this point right now where which path do we go, because we're growing. Do we go outside the lines? Do we go with multiple distributors, or do we refocus on ourselves and the community and go that route?
and have more tap rooms and
And
so
have more
forth.
tap
It
rooms.
really is kind of a pivot point. I mean, we've talked about that a fair number of times, not in any official capacity, but we're like pretty much tapped out for what we can do with one shift of the number of employees that we have in production and sales and distribution delivery. And the space, we're maximizing the throughput on the brewery system that we have on both the 7-barrel system and the 40-barrel system.
We got some room though over there. We can still increase
Little
our
bit of,
capacity. But Sean said,
about the future.
it would be the shifts. We'd have to have a couple more people to be able to do that. And that's what we're looking at all those. You got this universe with all these balls moving around. Okay, we're going to grab this one.
Well, that's just it. I mean, when when I sit with clients, I love working with people that have a growth mindset and think abundantly, right? But growth can be fickle.
Yeah.
And managing that the appropriate way. How have you guys managed growth being around for 11 years? How have you managed to go from, maybe just one location to opening 2? How have you guys managed the growth of Bier Brewery over these 11 years where you haven't kind of got out in front or over your skis a little bit?
I don't.
Go ahead.
That's kind of a difficult question sometimes, because some of that to me is just common sense. I mean, we sit down here with everybody and we look at our capacity and we said, okay, well, we've been doing X number in the past. How much can we do in the future? And then we look at on-premise versus off-premise. And a lot of that is not a strategic style meeting. It's more of a, we got an extra 50 kegs this month or this week, and we just kind of, with common sense, as well, we can do that. We can go over here, we can, and Ryan does a really good job of keeping the amount of inventory that we have and communicating with Sean. Well, we can do this week, and keep in mind next week we got something else coming on, and this next batch is going to hit the taps, at this particular time. So,
it's we're always slow, controlled. When we start discussing tap rooms, as you had mentioned, it was a conversation that we've had for a couple of years. Like, hey, we're going to start looking, but our thing is we don't want to get too big too fast and bite something off and not be able to supply, or you get too big too fast, you have all this product and it's great, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, where's all the reorders? And
well, you're overproduction.
Yeah.
I mean, here, and the worst thing that can happen is that if we do, we have too many locations or too many accounts, then we can't service them, and then you're in a shitload of problems there.
Yeah.
And
because we do our own distribution as well too.
yeah,
Right, and it's almost better to kind of go that direct to consumer through your tap rooms versus trying to deal with the distribution system throughout the state, which has its pros and cons, right?
And part of that growth is by Ryan and even with Sean knowing, what our capacity is and so forth, and then he goes and gets a hold of the 2 Chicks and the Hammer, and then they develop this program, and then keep Indy, and then we've got stuff going up in Carmel that we're constantly keeping in mind so that we don't overcommit and underproduce, and then we're in a real predicament.
Yeah.
It really is a kind of a just-in-time manufacturing process. I mean, you think about a brewery and a tap room, but it really is manufacturing. Sure. And we can't have too much obsolescence sitting around. We can't have too much raw material sitting around, because we're paying on like everything's net 0 or net 15, net 30 to be able to buy ingredients. The revenue comes in, it goes out the door, and it really is sort of like we're still fairly old school when it comes to writing things on dry boards, but it works. I mean, Ryan will get in a couple times a week and check inventory, and we talk every day before we do sales and trying to figure out where things need to be shifted. So it's been pretty organic that way, I would say.
That's good. I mean, coming through this for 11 years, what I like asking the question is, where do you guys draw inspiration from? You mentioned the German styles of beers. When I sat down with Taxman, they spent time in Belgium. So is there any specific breweries or any of the old school guys that you guys draw an inspiration on as you kind of built out the aesthetic of what you guys wanted to have when someone walks in the door of a beer brewery, whether here or Carmel location?
I think some of the drive is depending upon the day of the week and how long the whip that Darren uses back there. From production.
Right.
But I don't know. I think the beers, this is that's their capacity. I'm kind of.
I guess in the early days, Sierra Nevada was definitely an inspiration. It still is, because they keep true to, stylistic. They keep true to just really good, balanced beer. Malt flavors, hop flavors. But when it came to the appearance of the tap room and who we are, that kind of just developed through us.
Through us and our customers.
Yeah.
Well, I think early on, the the motivation that Darren had, one is to make good beer. He was also doing wine. He made very good wine too. That he fell in love with the Belgians and the Germans style beers, and he just honed in on that, and that's where he started, and it just kind of gravitated from there. No, we've not been to Belgium or Germany and so forth. We'd love to do that one of these days, but it's just something that has been his passion, and how that came about with him, we would have to ask him. But he stays in that lane, though. He does. So,
Yeah.
I mean, these fruit beers are driving him nuts.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's like a puzzle to be solved.
Yeah, it's because it's so non-traditional. But you got to listen to your customers, and you got to go where the market is, and that's exactly where it is right now with these fruit beers, these tart beers, and so forth. And but
It goes back to what Sean said, like, you know, we're not going to make our brewery all of a sudden a fruit beer brewery or a hazy beer brewery.
Yeah.
But having one option for that person who comes in that loves their fruit beer, loves their hazy beers, you know, having one option is great. And it comes back to us having a huge variety of beer.
yeah, I don't want to interrupt here, but
you're good.
I don't have a very big ego, but I'll tell you, Sean, you're sitting right in front of me in the camera, and I'm not seen on camera
There you
very
go.
well.
Well, we'll cut in with that one. So
There you go.
we'll cut in. We'll splice and cut in so everybody gets some good time, man. That's great.
Got you, Jerry.
Well, one of the things I love, because I grew up in Florida, moved up here in the Midwest in 2013, and what I love about, especially getting to know a lot of the brewers as I sit down with these guys, is that it's very much a sense of community. Everybody thinks it's a big blue ocean, but it really is a small pond, right? And as I've transitioned to different spots in business, I've always tried to tell the younger guys is don't burn your bridges on the way out. You got to circle back around and meet the same people in some capacity, or you may be in a different way, shape, or form. Being that it is such a community, and we have got to be upwards of 180 brewers here in Indiana now.
Yeah.
Back when you guys started in 2010, it was probably
A handful.
Yeah.
a handful. So, I mean, if you had to drink another Indiana brewer's beer, who would it be? Other than your own, if we could say that.
Well, let me answer it this way, is when I go out to spend my money at restaurants and dinner, I only go to restaurants that handle our beer. I only drink our beer.
And his thinking is they support us, we're going to go and
That's
support
exactly
them.
right.
Yeah.
Understood.
Um,
Understood.
You know, I've been impressed with Daredevil's lagers.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. I really do like a lot of their Pilsner. I've had a Munich Dunkel from them. If I'm going out and having a drink somewhere, I tend to go more with a traditional, and I would say that's why the Daredevil is a good option on that. What about you, Sean?
I don't know. Because I started, and I was really active in the homebrew community here in Indianapolis. In fact, that's how I met Darren. He sold me ingredients and would take my calls when I needed advice and stuff. So I'd been friends with Darren for, 20 years or nearly. And at the risk of singling any breweries out, in the homebrew community, I got to know Bill Ballinger and Mike Pearson, who own and run Daredevils. I've tried a lot of those beers when they were homebrewed beers, and knew that they were going to make great stuff when they opened up their own professional brewery. So I like Daredevil a lot. I like, there's a new one, Primeval, up in Noblesville.
Yeah.
Those guys started as homebrewers too. And
They Tim very well.
Oh my gosh.
They were episode 1.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
their lagers are like lights out. And one of the things you probably know and your audience knows is that it's the homebrew market that pushes the pro brew market. I think the most innovation comes out of homebrewers at smaller scale, that sort of wild maverick sort of spirit to wonder what would happen if I put this in the beer. I wonder what would happen if I try this technique.
As an advisor in my day-to-day, one of the things I always try to educate, guide, and my clients to is that there's just 4 challenges to kind of building wealth. And I always start with organization first, because if I can get people organized, it's 80% of the battle's half done. As you guys sit here coming out of a crazy year, what are some of the challenges you guys see as brewers, as business owners, that you're trying to avoid and or overcome here in the years to come?
Some of the challenges.
Well, as a business owner, the challenge is to be on the plus side of cash flow. You know,
Sure.
have more money in the bank, you know, than your debt is.
I mean, with everything going on, shortages or
Well, right now,
ships
yeah.
being stuck in ports. I mean, that's a challenge in itself. Of
Right.
Making sure we have cans and we have the right ingredients,
Well,
labels.
Darren handles the back end quite well all the time. He's dealing with the grain and so forth. However, I've been dealing with the cans. Ryan's been dealing with the labels and sleeves and so forth. And the cans seem to be softening a little bit now. However, I just got a memo from a source that said the word is that we might have another shortage coming up here in the next few months. Now, you don't know if that is just to motivate people to get the orders in right now or not, or so what. But to me personally, the can situation is my biggest challenge right now. Making sure that we have enough based on what their production's going to be. And then after that, I mean, things have changed. Hell, it's almost doubled, if not more, the cost of the cans, and they want you to order double to triple the number of cans that you normally have done in the past. So now all of a sudden, space availability becomes an issue for us.
Sure.
Where in the hell are we going to store these things?
So that's a big challenge.
It is that just-in-time manufacturing thing again, where it's if you buy enough, you get a discount, but where are you going to put it? And beer that's sitting in the cooler that we're not ready to move yet, but we could move. It's trying to produce enough and maintain that balance of your raw ingredients and packaged beer and production. It's trying to keep that all sort of in sync, where you're a little bit ahead. You got cash flow coming in, so you can pay your bills.
And a good example is that we can easily afford and justify a canning line here. The problem is space.
Sure.
Cans, machine. Where do we do that? And we looked at the cost of mobile canning versus the increase it would be to carry that many cans, the extra space and so forth, and it's a wash. At this stage of the game, it's a wash for us. And so we don't have a line.
There's a couple of different business models that I'm sure you run across talking to your clients. It's what we see now a lot is tap rooms. There's a proliferation of tap rooms. People are open more tap rooms around town or regionally, super regionally. Beer through the wall is the most profitable way to sell beer.
Yeah.
It's your the next step up, I would say, would be draft at on-premises accounts. And what really stung everybody during COVID, every production brewery, is having to put things in bottles and cans with the increase in materials, material costs, and all the inputs there. It's the least profitable way to sell beer. Even though we're self-distributing our own product, then you've got a sales force that's out, a distribution team that's out for the lowest possible margin on selling beer that way. So the only way you make money in that is by having a much larger production to be able to sell the beer.
So what he just did, he just put himself out of a job.
Yeah. There we go.
I don't know. Start my own.
We're
beer
not making
tavern.
any money on Sean all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Dang.
Well, come on in here, Jerry. Look, this is my. No, go ahead.
No, but he's right. He's exactly right.
Yeah.
I would much rather have, if you had the personnel and you could logistically handle it, I'd much rather have 10 tap rooms out there in great areas selling our beer than hoofing it through wholesale.
Sure.
And it does take the same. That's one of the things that I've learned from moving from the home brewer scale to the pro brewer scale. Most of it translates 1-to-1. But a lot of it is just looking at, you can have 3 or 4 people in production working on a 20-barrel brew plant, filling 40-barrel fermenters. It takes the same amount of guys, employees back in production, to make 180 barrels of beer. It might take a little longer to chill and move the beer around within the brewery. But if we could produce on a larger scale, then the cost of things comes down so that we can sell the beer, the packaged beer, a little less expensive. So, I mean, it's just what business model you pick and which way you're going to build goes into it.
Now, Jerry, you mentioned a few minutes ago community, and I think that's a big word to a lot of, not just breweries, but business owners as a whole, is trying to create a sense of community. And you guys are kind of in these kind of pocket neighborhoods. What does that word mean to you guys at Bier Brewery, the word community?
Oh gosh, it means a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I think that's our driving force.
Yeah.
That's our driving force here.
Yeah. I mean, the support that we get, even through like the pandemic, was incredible from the community when everything was on lockdown and no bars and, you know, everything was curbside. I mean, especially our sales, I mean, it never dipped. It was skyrocketing. So
that was really surprising, the support, especially the first couple months. You know, it weaned a little bit after that. You know, I think people started getting tired of going out, you know, all the time like that.
Yeah.
But we also listen to the community. I can't tell you how many, since when things started opening up, it's like the faucet turned on again. How many schools and churches and nonprofit organizations has contacted us for, you know, silent auction items, support and so forth. Can you donate to this? Can you help us out that? And it is really hard to say no. We find it extremely difficult to say no. So, you know, we're dealing these little silent auction items all the time. And there are some situations where we do donate beer. You know, we do a lot with Riley's Kids Hospital, some of the other nonprofit, you know, they have disease oriented and so forth. And we do where we can, but at the same time, we have to keep in mind, we're in here to be in business. You know, we're not here to give beer away or donate beer for all these things. And sometimes I've got to tell these organizations, I said, man, we love you and we want to help you out. I said, but we can't do what you want us to do, because tomorrow I want to help so-and-so out. The next day I want to help so-and-so out. I can't throw everything at you at once. And in general, they really understand that.
Sure.
Yeah. And kind of a segue into community, a great example is our can collars. So this past year we switched from plastic PackTex to 95% less plastic, has 5% plastic in it, 95% paperboard. And we looked at it as like helping the community, because if one of those do get thrown on the side of the road, it will eventually break down. It's the same material as a milk carton, not a jug, but milk carton. You know, and those milk cartons break down after 5 or so years. But PackTex, I mean, you're looking at 500 years for that thing to break down.
Right.
So, you know, looking back at the word community, I mean, focusing on our sustainability, the impact we have on the community and future generations. That's why we brought in the can collars. You know, I was looking, I'm like, there's got to be some other options out there than just using plastic all the time. We were actually the first brewery in the state to bring these in. There were a couple other breweries using 100% compostable ones, but we did try them out.
That's the first time I've seen these.
Yeah, we tried out the 100% compostable, but it slowed our operation down due to our scale, so it wasn't feasible for our size. This was the next best option, and we're currently working with the supplier for 100% plastic free, which would be even greater benefit to the community.
Are we going to be their beta test site?
Yeah, we will be one of the beta test sites for it. So we're looking at it for community involvement and just the impact that we have. You know, other things we've done for the community and for the environment on that would be we no longer use plastic cups on our patios or big events. We actually purchased reusable cups. So our big events that bring in 300 to 1,000 people, they are now able to walk home with a reusable cup. We actually got a photo of a guy out in Germany with it. They were on a bike trip out in Germany and took a photo of it. And
Yeah, standing there with his beer brewery, his little white beer brewery cup. They brought him along because it's reusable, it's light, it was packable, and And it just so happened to fit our sort of environmental focus and our
Yeah.
kind of green initiative to reduce and reuse and recycle things whenever possible. So
Yeah, now we compost all of our taproom waste. We serve Bavarian pretzels here, and everything that's served with the Bavarian pretzel is compostable. When you use the washrooms, restrooms, paper towels, we compost those. So going
that's
back
community.
to community, we really focused in on that actually during the pandemic, and how are we leaving the community with what we're doing currently? Are we leaving it in a better state, worse state? So we've done a lot of, in addition to what Jerry mentioned with donations and hospitals and, you name it, we always help, but there's a lot of our packaging materials and how we operate.
interesting thing that I want to make sure that we pointed out is I know that Ryan had mentioned the collaboration that we did with Two Chicks and a Hammer, the TV show, and Jerry talked about the volunteerism and the organizations that we help out in the community. One of the things that I traditionally, breweries do a lot of collabs or collaborations with other, traditionally it's one brewery getting together with another brewery and sharing staff, sharing ideas, sharing recipes, and putting a beer together jointly. We've not done that yet, not that we're opposed to doing it, I think we'd be open to doing it, but one of the things that we've done here that I've never seen another brewery do is we've treated our collabs like social collabs. We find other organizations in the community for which we have an affinity or a like-mindedness. It's something that we're both passionate about, and we've really kind of latched on to doing collaborations with other people in the community to kind of intersect their audience and their group with our audience and our group, and it's actually worked out really well. It's been a big takeaway for me of like looking at collaborations in a new way. That
Well, one of the reasons why we haven't done a lot with other breweries is that, what our production demands are. We don't have a lot of time in production to say, okay, we can back off of X items so we can throw this thing in there. Ryan and these guys have been out there, and we know what our seasonals are, what our demands are going to be, and it's very demanding to throw something into the wheel and start mixing it up at that time. So that's one of the reasons why we haven't really done with other breweries.
Yeah, and now it's kind of like, do we need to collaborate with another brewery, or do we collaborate with the community? We have chosen to go the community route this past year.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I sit on a board in town of the Indiana Diaper Bank, and to be able to change and pivot and adapt is very difficult coming out of the year that we just did. Like, we opened up a pantry so that people could come the first Saturday every month instead of our distribution partners were closed. And just being able to turn and pivot, like we do a Touch a Truck event every year. We were going to do it at Whitestown. They got nervous, so had to cancel the event. So I'm doing it at our office at Invest next Friday. So being able to turn and pivot and be adaptable is a great thing, and hopefully we'll have a great event and have some folks come out to it to help drive. Yeah. So community's very important to me, and I think that's a servant attitude I'm trying to teach my children, because they come with me to do all that stuff.
You betcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, last question, fellas. When I sit down with clients for the first time, I often ask everyone this singular question, which is, if we were to decide to work together and do business, what would you want to accomplish in the next 3 years, whether it be personally, financially, emotionally, where we can look back at year 3 and say our time spent together was valuable and we're on the right track? As it pertains to your business, if we were to sit down again for a podcast 3 years from now, what goals and expectations do you have for Bier Brewery, and what would you want to see take place over those next 3 years that we could look back and say, hey,
Well,
this will be
doing what
interesting
we
'cause
wanted.
we haven't rehearsed this, so we're going to get
My,
3 different answers.
my first thing would be to keep that door open as we are today. That would be the worst case scenario, is keeping our doors open and us staying who we are. The best scenario would be, depending upon, like Sean has brought up, what kind of business plan you're looking at, is that how many tap rooms do we have? Okay. How many more counties have we added to our distribution channel? That'd be another thing to look at. And then with all that in mind, I'd be sitting back there thinking, okay, the quality of life of our employees, has that gotten worse for them, or has that gotten better for them?
How many more gray hairs has Sean got?
Yeah.
Could be.
You know, I think at my stage in my life, I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about the customers being able to come someplace.
Get a fly on your hair.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Call me Pence. Worried about our customers being able to, you know, have an experience at our tap rooms and continue to have our beer, and also these guys having a quality of life, personal life with kids. They all have young kids, to be able to go out there and enjoy their personal lives as well as their professional lives. So,
Very good.
I would say an impact on the community, because I've, you know, it's just ironic we're talking about it, but I've really been pushing more for sustainability and less impact footprint-wise.
well, he's
on
been the
environment.
driving force. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Not only down here, but also up in Carmel, which we made headroads too.
Yeah.
So yes, I could understand.
Continue
that.
looking at sustainable options for how we operate day to day, how we put materials into the accounts and the world itself, and, you know, are we leaving it a better place for the younger generations, for our kids, and
And
so
then
I would say an impact.
our
on the
customer
community.
base has noticed that too. They thanked us. We've had quite a few people thank us for the direction that we've taken it. So,
Yeah. You know,
That's great.
implementing new ways to be more sustainable.
you know.
And I feel strange answering this question because I'm one of the newer employees here, and my last name's not Connor, but one
You're
of
a brother.
one of the things that I've thought about is because I'm coming at this towards I got into professional brewing later in life. I worked in the corporate world for years, and it's really just identifying who we're going to be in the future, what business model are we going to go with, and what do we want that future to look like. And I think the most important thing is like writing it down. I don't know that we've talked about it a lot in the short time that I've been here. We've talked about a lot of things, but actually capturing it on paper and then taking it that next step, like backdating it and making sure there's benchmarks and milestones, and then making a decision to actively work towards those things, because I am a big believer in that if you don't write it down and you don't plan for it, it's never going to happen. I mean, it's like we have vision for what we could become, and I think just kind of capturing that in a sort of a formal process, and putting some commitments on it and working towards something, because I think we all have a kind of an amazing vision in our mind of what Bier Brewery will look like, the impact we'll have on the community, the lives that we've touched, both employees and people out in the community. I think it's just codifying all of that and planning towards it and working towards that plan, so that in 3 to 5 years or 7 years, whenever it is, that it really comes to fruition.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, keep in mind that the flexibility to be able, as you talked about, is to turn on a dime.
For sure.
With what the pandemic has created here, we have to be so flexible that in a moment's notice, we got to go a different direction.
Right.
But Sean's right. We've talked about it. We have not solidified anything, and I don't know if that's because we're afraid to solidify something and make a decision, and then all of a sudden, halfway through that process, oh shit, we should have gone this direction, you know, or we need to change. But
Right.
yeah, that's.
Well, that's beautiful, gentlemen. Well, come check out Bier Brewery here at their location on 65th Street or over in Carmel. Gentlemen, appreciate
Thank
your time. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Fist bump it there. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Come check them out.
That's a wrap.
There it is. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. For the latest on financial views with local brews, please check out our website at financialviewswithlocalbrews.com. You can also find us on YouTube via our channel there under the same name, Financial Views with Local Brews, as well as follow us on all of our social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, where you can like and connect with us throughout the craft beer universe that we're trying to explore here in the great state of Indiana. As always, cheers, The next round's on me, and I look forward to seeing you for future episodes. Bye, everyone.